Good evening. It is March 29th, Tuesday, 2016. My name is Jacob,
And I'm Danielle.
and we are the Proteus Podcast. Ideas in all shapes and forms.
How are you doing, Jake?
I am doing reasonably well.
Reasonably well. Please explain.
Still recovering from my injury, but let's not dwell on the past. But getting better, getting better.
Okay. I learned a valuable lesson.
A valuable lesson.
Yes, on the dangers of excessive drink.
Oh, indeed.
Y-
Do tell.
Yeah, I was drinking a good bit, and my lady being out of town and in Hawaii for the past week, this Saturday after caucusing, I drank a lot with some friends, and then decided, you know what? It's a great idea. Let's watch all the Hunger Game movies.
That does
And
seem like a weird choice. Most people just go to Taco Bell.
no, no, no. We had plenty of pizza to be had. So I watched back to back all four Hunger Games films.
I thought there was only 3 books.
There's three books, but they split the last book into two films.
Because you can't make enough money if you don't make more movies out of it.
That's right. I mean, everyone wants to emulate the money fort that Peter Jackson has built.
Right, money for it, money for it.
Money fort, money fort. How many Benjamins are they made of?
All
But
the Benjamins, thank you.
all the Benjamins. So I came to a couple conclusions, some of
And?
which may be completely uh, common knowledge. But
Okay.
the first one being the movies suck.
Well, yeah. And?
Like they're pretty bad. The second thing is that I believe it is a fairy tale misogynistic tale.
Huh.
Yeah. Um,
That's
I'm
weird, considering the main protagonist is a female.
Yeah, but she's a female without agency. Are you familiar with the term agency?
Let's just pretend that I am and move on.
But okay, for if you don't know it, then I'm going to assume that the majority of people that are listening in probably don't know the term.
Okay, go for it.
Agency is the ability to make decisions on your own with forethought and then act upon those thoughts into your actions. So
So
it's like
what you're
having
saying in this context is the protagonist might have an idea, but then has to ask everyone else what to do.
more along the lines of she's always reacting and never acting really on her own. Um,
Hmm.
with the exception of a couple moments, um, she is just in a constant state of either being saved by someone else or reacting to a situation that she has no control over. So she doesn't have any true agency. She's never in control of her own fate.
We'll talk about that portion of your rant later. Continue.
Okay, so there's that. Two, the way that females are particularly portrayed throughout the series is just terrible.
Hmm.
They're anyone that's older than um, Katniss, the main character, as they progress into middle age and then to older age, are either insane, worthless, a burden, unsympathetic, non-existent, or completely just fluff, filler in.
Hmm.
Okay, like one example would be a character that's in all three films, Effie, her designer lady who's in charge of her image.
Mm-hmm.
She's just empty brained. Her mom, who's a middle aged woman, is completely non emotional, kind of absent. Her younger daughter, Katniss's younger sister, is constantly stepping in to do things for her. For whatever reason, they don't really explain it. Um, The other Victor tribute, the older woman Mags, is literally a burden that has to be carried around. It's just all this like negative imagery. Oh, it's so frustrating. So anyway, I'm like watching the films, and I'm watching them, and I'm like, holy crap, there's a lot of shit here in this film that's pissing me off. I better start writing it down. So by the end of watching the fourth film, I'm at the edge of the couch. I filled up like a notepad and a half of little yellow notebooks, sitting on the edge of my couch. I'm like, man, that was really bad. What time is it? It's 5 a.m. Oh, I've made some bad life decisions.
Well, allow me my rebuttal. One, the first Hunger Games movie stayed in our local theater for over a month, which was just the worst thing ever. So I refused to watch the second three. That's a legitimate way of putting that, I think. The second three. I think I read the first two books. I know I read the first one. And I think to some degree, the ineffectual other female characters are actually kind of the point. Is from what I remember of the book, and forgive me if I'm wrong because this was many moons ago that I made myself read it. It kind of was like, my take on it was the culture that it's portraying has been so downtrodden that many of these characters, the female characters in particular, have fallen into these misogynistic roles where they simply accept their position or are so particularly downtrodden they no longer care to try to ameliorate. No, it doesn't matter. To correct their position, right? As for your stance that she is without agency, I would contend that very few people in the universe have any. And it's nice to portray people as being their own agent, but when it comes right down to us, most people are merely reacting to the shit that goes on around them. Very few people, with the exception of the upright and the few, have a good handle on their destiny and move from point A to point B under their own will. And even the ones that do are befraught with non-agency and have to react to all of the shit that arises throughout your life.
Oh no, I think that at times people, due to situations of their life, lack agency. That happens, but to never have any agency, to be constantly at the whims and pulls of other people, is a completely different matter.
Yeah, and if it's at the whims and pulls of other people and you are being puppeted, that's definitely a different situation. But my initial reaction is that most of us are not at the whims and pulls of other people, but we're also not particularly piloting our own existence.
Okay, but that's a more existential view of the world.
I'm saying very many people thrust into the type of situation portrayed in that particular saga would be in a pretty much purely reactionary situation. I mean, you go from being a hunter-gatherer effectively to leading a revolution. You're probably going to be doing it mostly reactionarily.
So, but the thing is, though, is that she was never leading the revolution. Even there, she didn't have agency, in which she was a figurehead that was placed there. Yeah. And then her actions were decided not by herself, but by the people that were running the revolution. And she merely agreed to accomplish her goals that were beset upon through probably a PTSD mindset. But I think her overall issue, though, goes beyond PTSD, because it's how that she's treated, not necessarily the mental effects that she has been, or the the experiences that she's experienced. It's the way the writer treats her, or at least the way the screenwriter treated her. And
Yeah. Now the books, I think, are to a fair degree different on that than the screenplays because, I mean, how often is a screenplay any more loyal to the source work? On the other hand, no one ever said it was actually a particularly good piece of literature.
actually, I think Spud um, perfectly described the literature to me yesterday. She said, "Oh, the books aren't that bad, but really not that great either. I mean, I didn't read anything past the first book because I thought the writing was terrible."
Yeah.
I think that pretty much sums it up.
It's written for young adults. It's not. It's tween novels that are getting made into movies. It's not exactly, anything. I would be woe to expect it to be anything on the caliber of The Lord of the Rings or something actually good.
Well, I guess my bigger problem with it, and I have the same problem with Twilight, is where they look at these female characters and they're like, "This is a strong female character. This is a good role model."
And they're
and
not.
like, especially in Twilight, I'm like, "Oh my god, this chick has pretty much been given over by the writer to this sadistic, controlling megalomaniac.
Yeah.
This is the worst thing ever you want your teenage daughter to read."
Yeah, it's nothing. They are not good books, and the fact that they're popular is the only reason they're movies.
So, other side things, sciencey things that I just didn't get about this film. Can you imagine a world where it even works that you could split up the North America into 13 districts and have them mono-produce something, and that works? And then further,
No.
you obliterate one of those districts off that is the only district that produces X thing, and everything continues to be just fine?
I could see how that could work. Assuming the district you obliterated pretty much existed in, Nevada and Arizona, and all it was producing was sand.
We're talking the Northeast, and that would be District 13, the Northeast. So pretty much everything north of the Mason-Dixon line, up throughout whatever that part of Canada is.
So what you're saying is there's no lobster in their diet.
Yeah, there's no lobster. And
it's the...
And then, you eliminate all the coal when they blew up District 12. I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah, it's not
stupid.
A legitimate... I mean, it's a pure fantasy novel, and the pretense that it's set in the American continent is probably one of the greater failings of it, because anyone that has ever looked at a map of the United States goes, this is bullshit.
Well, have you seen, they actually have a map of how it's all broken up.
Yeah, and it's bullshit.
It's like the capital is Montreal or some bullshit like that.
See, that it makes more sense than most of the things I'd been imagining it, just because it'd have to be way up in the north to get that much Pacific Northeast or Atlantic Northeast terrain into the movie. Yeah, it's dumb.
Yeah, so yeah, just lots of ire and angst about a bad film.
Yeah. Have you watched any of The 100? It's a show.
No.
It's probably equally bad.
But Charlavoid.
No, there's a whole bunch of angsty tween shit in it because that's what's popular. But at the same time, the story is kind of interesting. The gist of the concept is we somehow or another nuked the Earth, and there were 12 or so giant orbiting space stations at this point, which all link up and become one big space station, and with the express purpose of, they called it the Ark, and they're trying to continue the human race in space for so many hundred years while the radiation dissipates on the ground. But because they suck at their jobs, they have to exile all of the people in the prison to the ground, and it's mostly young people, and it's 100 people, and they send them down, and turns out you can live on the ground, and lots of bad things continue to happen. Blah, 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 blah.
So basically what you just told me is, hey, there's this TV show that's equally as bad as the Hunger Games, but you should watch it because there's interesting story points.
Yeah. I don't know that it's really as bad as the Hunger Games. I think in so many regards it's probably better.
I think I'm going to go back to watching documentaries about ducks.
Can you
Seems
recommend
safe.
a good documentary about ducks?
A good documentary
A
about
documentary?
ducks? There's a documentary about the Mighty Ducks. It stars Emilio Estevez.
Oh, we're not going to do that. No.
Emilio!
I'm sorry for that.
Why are you sorry?
I just felt sorry.
It's the Mighty Duck Man.
I felt sorry for the Emilio thing.
Emilio Estevez.
Yeah.
Did I derail you?
You derailed me pretty nastily. Something about the 100. It's an interesting show at times.
At times.
Because I guess it's also based
really
on
bad.
a series of 3 books, which I don't know.
So
I think you know what I really think most of these movies, like The Hunger Games and this show, and say the Maze Runner, now almost a trilogy, what they want and what they're trying to do is they're trying someone somewhere in a very fancy office with probably, doing large amounts of drugs through a gold-plated cocaine straw, really, really likes his lifestyle and wants to create something that is the next Harry Potter series. Because it would make him all the money. And so they're trying desperately to find some book series that will get them 7 or 8 movies and make them umpteen millions of dollars.
Well, that's a tough one.
I think that's what it is, because the Harry Potter series did incredibly well, and depending on who you talk to, isn't badly written. And, that's what they need, because it's Hollywood and they've got to make their money somehow, and they know that all the money is in, 13 to 22-year-olds' pockets now. Or in 13 to 22-year-olds' parents' credit cards, whichever you prefer. The point being, that's what they're trying to do, and failing beautifully.
Yeah, there's a lot of failure.
Yeah,
A lot of fail. Oh, so let's shift topics. Ready for a shift of topic?
Sure.
You want to leave the world of movies behind?
Well, I could have had carried on for hours, but we do movies a lot.
Okay, so as I said, I caucused on Saturday, and it was a chaotic democratic event.
That'll learn you some kind of valuable lesson about the democratic process.
Yeah, there was democracy in action.
Ugh.
So, it's a very old school, very low tech way of assigning delegates.
Yeah. So, to quote one of our founding fathers, democracy is a terrible way to run a country, but it's better than all the other ways we've tried.
Yeah. So, we had 3 times the amount of people than what the caucusing location was expecting.
Oh my.
So that meant that the ballroom that we were in, which had a capacity limit of 800, at one point had around 600 people more than what it should have.
And the fire marshal said, "Hey, cut that out."
Well, the great part about this is before the fire marshal showed up, they knew that they were 600 people over because they had people counting at the door, and the line to get in the building was wrapped around the city block twice.
How does one manage a line that wraps twice?
The line goes back around, and then there's another layer.
Seems like it'd be easy to take cuts in that line.
Yeah, well, luckily they were all good-natured, democratic people, and there didn't seem to be any cutsies. So in order to caucus, they put half of the groups outside in the park. Another two precincts. Sorry, I'll say precincts. Another two precincts were taken to a church nearby, and another three precincts were moved into another part of the building where we displaced a group doing yoga.
That'll learn them to get fit.
Yeah, teach them. We have to decide between an old dude from Vermont and a middle-aged older lady from Arkansas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always find it hard to believe she's from Arkansas.
I don't know where she's actually from.
Thinking Arkansas.
Well, I know that's their home state, but is that where she's from?
Maybe.
Anyway.
I'm not Googling it because I don't actually want to know.
So, anyway, the burn, a lot of people were feeling the burn, and across the state, it was a 5-1 in favor of the Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I saw that on the news that he kind of romped the western seaboard a little bit.
Which was kind of expected.
Yeah.
It's, so I was caucusing for Hillary, and ended up, my precinct got one delegate out of 6. And I stepped aside. I was like, I'll be a delegate. And this other lady was like, I'll be a delegate. And she was way more dykey than I was. So I was like, you may be the delegate. I shall be your backup delegate. Because
I don't even know how to feel about that.
That's how democracy works, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we're both supporting Hillary Clinton, and you look to be an Uber dyke. You win.
You win.
So.
Wow.
So yeah. After everything was done, we were exchanging information in case she couldn't make it to the next stage of being a delegate. And come to find out, she is also from Houston, Texas.
Well,
And she was from literally 2 miles from where I grew up.
Well, it's a weirdly small world.
Yeah. So figure that one out, folks. What are the
mind boggles. The mind boggles.
The mind, it does boggle. So, yeah. So, I participated in a whole different form of the democratic process I had never participated in before.
Well, look at you getting an education.
I know.
And being all civic and what have you.
Being all civic. Doing the civic duties.
I've reached the point where I'm doing my level best to ignore every aspect of the presidential election for the next 6 months.
Is that because you're afraid, or
no?
You just
I am just blisteringly tired of it. It's like we've got 6 more months of this, really, give or take, and it's just, oh my! Please stop yelling and actually say something worthwhile.
I'm eating it up. I'm loving the political process. It's like every election year where there's a president on the line. I'm like, oh man, this is like Thunderdome.
Yeah. It's like
especially watching the Republican side of the events.
The Republican side has devolved into who can be stupider faster.
Which is crazy.
And the Democratic side is devolved into
attack Donald Trump.
Attack Donald Trump and hope it gets you votes.
I mean,
you would hope that the people we would choose to run the country would be above all this bull roar, but quite clearly this is what sells candy bars and gets votes.
Well, I think Donald Trump, he just wants to sell steaks. That's all the man really wants.
I get a kick out of, though, there's a lot of people who started referring to him as the Great Orange One because of his fake tan. And so I am all on that. He's the Great Orange One.
The Great Orange One.
Oh, Great Orange One. What would you have us do?
If you describe Donald Trump to me without using his name, it's like, yeah, he's a guy. He has really unnaturally orange skin.
And a strange silver comb over.
Strange silver comb over that's most likely a wig. and he kind of has small hands, and he's really good at selling things. I'm like, so you're telling me a carny?
And his face is slightly too narrow for his head.
Yeah, it's like, so you're telling me a carny is running for president?
Pretty much. It's the great orange one.
The great orange one.
Yeah. So I guess your side of the thing can refer to him as the great orange foe.
The great orange foe. The thing is, he's not the foe yet.
Well, he's a pretty good chance of being the foe.
Pretty good chance.
I mean, that's the point. At this point, like you said, the Democratic side is basically worrying about how to defeat Donald Trump.
I feel like there's actually like this deal like going on in the back of Washington where the Democrat leaders and the Republican leaders have met up and they're like, you know what? None of us want Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's what's wild about it.
It's like we finally found something that we can agree upon. Donald Trump, no thanks.
Yeah, and the American public is either vastly for him or vastly. It's just what. Speaking of Donald Trump, we're gonna briefly address this thing that bothers me. There was a thing in the news today that a student at some college had a whiteboard on her door. Like you do when you're, like and people come and write stupid things on your whiteboard.
Like I was here with your mom.
Yeah, and someone came and wrote Donald Trump 2016 on her whiteboard. And she called campus PD and said that it was a hostile and violent act.
Well, what school is this?
It was California. I don't know.
Because, certain areas, that could get you shot.
Yeah, but Donald Trump 2016 being construed as a violent act.
Well, what happened? What was the response?
A bunch of people said, yes, it's completely inappropriate to write Trump 2016 on someone's door. That's the same as assaulting them.
Well, political... Okay, I disagree. Okay, what did the campus police do, though?
Probably nothing.
Okay.
Because the type of people that become police are the type of people that look at you and say, are you retarded?
So I'm actually more concerned about the person who reported this news story, right? Because someone in the university saw this report and decided to make it an actual news story.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how it became a news story really quick. But it went out on Twitter and whatnot, so...
Now, I will say that depending on what part of the country you're in, not saying that California is one of these parts, because I think that the news story itself is stupid.
Yeah, I guess it was Scripps College, which is some part of Claremont Colleges, which is a consortium of liberal arts colleges in Southern California.
Okay.
Not that really means anything.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to matter much. But I will say that in some areas, if you're so diametrically opposed to the political leanings of the area, you keep your vote quiet.
And I think that's a real problem that we need to address in our country. The attitude that you need to eviscerate the people that disagree with you.
Mm-hmm. And another mark.
This keeps happening on social media nowadays. Somebody says something stupid, and the internet and the public at large sets out to eviscerate their reputation and make sure they lose their job and so on and so forth. And that attitude really needs to stop.
I agree.
If you disagree with someone, disagree with them, but don't try to destroy them. That's not the way the world's supposed to work.
I completely agree. You shouldn't respond with violence. You shouldn't respond with threats of violence, and you definitely shouldn't promote it.
Yeah, but and a lot of them don't use threats of violence and stuff, but they contact where these people work and ask for them to be fired for thoughts they had, for opinions they expressed in their private life, which I don't think is appropriate. because
Which is
you can
why
be an
people-
asshole in public, but as long as you don't do it while you're on the job, I don't think it should have any effect on your,
Well, I think that
professional
I
life.
think that there's a limit to that, though, right?
There is a limit to
like,
it, but
for instance,
we've gone
if
too
you're
far
a
with
teacher, if you're a teacher, you shouldn't get on Facebook and start going off about your rampant racism.
Probably not. But at the same time, if you're a teacher and you go on vacation and you spend some time on a beach in a swimsuit, you shouldn't get fired for having those pictures on your Facebook.
I completely agree.
And that has happened. And
yeah, I agree.
I think
I
that's
agree.
inappropriate. All right, so...
Wow, this is weird. We just had a political discussion where we agreed.
Yeah, that's pretty much impressive because
then,
we are diametrically opposed generally.
And then we had a social issue discussion, which we also agreed.
It turns out if you give people enough time and enough education, they can have differing political opinions and still get along.
Yeah. And also, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. Who do we dislike?
Donald Trump.
There you go. The great orange one.
The great orange one. The great orange foe.
The great orange foe, Charlie Brown. Oh, man. Do you have a quote?
I do. And this quote, as far as I can tell, is attributed only to me. And I said this one day at work because it turns out it seems to be true. And the quote is, "If you want your life to be easy, you're going to have to work hard first."
Okay. I see that. I can almost agree with it. I think some people are really lucky, though.
Yeah, most people are, not most people. Some people are very lucky. Most people, if you want your life to be easy, you are going to have to work hard first.
All right. So mine comes from The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yay.
It is by The Wizard of Oz. And it's him referring to the Tin Woodsman.
Mm-hmm.
"As for you, my galvanized friend, you want a heart. You don't know how lucky you are not to have one. Hearts will never be practical until they can be made unbreakable."
That's a good quote.
It is. And then the Tin Woodsman doesn't see the wisdom, and he goes, "But I still want one." But then again, see, okay, so closing thoughts and all that, but this kind of goes off from that, and I was thinking about this when I was speaking with a friend the other day. Can you actually miss something you've never known?
Yes.
Like if you, let's say you have always lived underground. Underground is the existence that you know. You don't know what the world above is. How can you miss the sun?
Well, to that extreme, possibly no. But in the more everyday application, where you may be peripherally aware of certain things, I believe it is entirely possible to miss something you've never had.
What's an example?
I can't give an example.
Okay.
But I think it is possible.
All right. I think
I think it's a uniquely human condition. Like a mole will probably never miss the sun.
Mm-hmm.
But a human being, we're, for lack of a better word, made to be a certain way and have certain things, like just friendship and interaction with other people and things like of that nature. And I believe it is entirely possible for people to miss things, especially of certain social aspects that they have never actually had.
But if they don't know of them, though, that's what I'm talking about. Not peripherally aware, because if you're peripherally aware, you're still aware. Let's say, for instance,
I think there's certain parts of human nature that you will miss something even if you don't know about it.
What about cheesecake?
I think everyone misses cheesecake, whether they know about it or not.
But what if they've never had cheesecake? What if they don't even know that cheesecake exists? How can you miss it if you've never had it?
Well, I guess you can retcon missing. Is once you finally experience cheesecake, all of your previous existence has the longing for cheesecake retconned into it. You're like, I wish I had had this since the beginning. Cheesecake being so wonderful.
Oh,
now I know that my whole life up till this point has been a lie because there was no cheesecake.
Cheesecake. Okay.
So are you jaded today?
Yeah, I'm about a 4.
Only a 4. That's
Yeah.
good. You're not at the fulcrum of whatever we named that.
Yeah, the fulcrum of
Suctitude.
Of suctitude or something like that. Gosh darn it, we need to find that. We need to use it more.
You're gonna have to listen to the podcast again and write that down.
Damn it.
Yeah.
I don't like listening to myself.
As for me and myself, I believe I am merely a 2. I am not jaded today.
Oh, wow.
I don't believe it is possible to be a 1 on the jaded meter. The older you get, the bottom of the sliding scale starts moving. I assume by the time I'm 80, the minimum jaded score I'll have is a 4.
I don't know. I think you can have a 1. You're just skewed.
I may be skewed, but
It's not the scale, it's you.
like I said, the older you get, the more you skew the scale.
What was that line from The Matrix? It is not the spoon that must bend, but it is you.
I realize there is no spoon.
Yeah,
I haven't watched those movies in years.
They're
The
so
special
good.
effects in the second and third one do not hold up, though. I remember watching them again a while back.
Too much CGI.
Yeah, the extra Smiths look super plasticky.
Yeah, the extra Smiths.
Uh,
What he should have done, it goes, here I am, Neo, and here are my 50 slightly related cousins.
yeah. Anyways,
I call them Smithlings.
the Smithlings.
So, hey, if you enjoyed listening to us, or if you hated it, leave a review on either Stitcher or iTunes, or leave us a comment on Twitter, or send us a mail to proteuspodcast@gmail.com.
That's all we have for tonight. I've been Jacob.
And I'm still Danielle.
And we've been the Proteus Podcast. Have a lovely evening.
Good night.